All right, you beautiful humans. I do not typically do videos like this, but here we are. I typically do like live streams or podcasts when it comes to like announcements or just new releases. But of course, the M4 MacBook Air is announced. I wanted to follow up on the videos that I did. Well, at least one of them I did like a week or so ago on this channel, and then a couple of shorts that I followed up with on Instagram and another channel. And I happened to actually see the news when I was checking the stock market this morning, and then something came up about Apple dropping the price of the MacBook Air, and then I saw the M4 was there, and of course here we are. So $999 for this base model MacBook Air, and I realize on the M3 iteration it was $1099 if I'm not mistaken. So all of a sudden, like Apple's dropping the prices. Here's the thing, folks. These things should start with 16 gigs of RAM. That's just the way it is. Apple Intelligence is going to be taking advantage of this anyway. And $999 for those of you like an entry level, I mean, this isn't an entry level machine like I think the Mac Mini is, but from a portable device, a laptop, this is entry level, okay, for some of you. And I know it's a big ask for many. But yeah, $999, okay, great. Like I don't necessarily see it as a gift going from $1099 to $999. It's where it should be. Actually, it could be cheaper, but we'll talk about education pricing. As far as the battery life is concerned, these machines, I can speak to that. I still have the M1 and this is the M2 in front of me. I love the battery life on these things. I rarely have to charge them, although I am connected to an external display that is charging it right now. But here's the thing, like the performance is fantastic, especially for what you get on battery, because you don't lose any of the performance and you still get that great battery life. So I'm just scrolling through this with you because I haven't even really looked at this stuff. But as far as the display is concerned, I have the 13-inch iteration of the M2 here. And for those of you that might not want to use an external display, okay, maybe the 15-inch is the way to go. We'll kind of talk about that in the pricing. But I do like the 13-inch footprint because I throw it in the bag. I take this thing with me every single day, everywhere that I go pretty much. So I do love that ultra portability, and I'm always using external displays for like heavier things as far as like if I need those two displays, especially like creative work for sure. So we'll talk about that. Oh, sky blue. This was funny. People were actually, I saw like some stuff on social about the sky blue. The funny thing is I have like this sky blue on like this case on my M2. So I thought that was kind of funny. I don't know that I would personally purchase the sky blue, but it could be fun. It could be fun. And maybe that's just something that for them, it might get some attention. So it'll be interesting to see like what that really looks like. But as we go along here, now here's one of the things. Okay, the M4, the chip that zips. Oh, here is what I saw this. I said this on social, or at least one of my shorts, when I talked about when you are thinking about your investment and they hadn't announced it yet, and talking about how you see the graphs and it's faster and more efficient, they always compare it to the M1. And of course, even in those Intel-based MacBook Airs, I said it. I said that on the short. I was like, you betcha they are going to put this as the comparison. And here's the thing, like the M1s, the M1 Max MacBook Pro right behind me, still great. It hasn't slowed down. Like it doesn't slow down for me, for what I need. And it's really just iterative. Now we also know that this is 3 nanometer technology, and we can actually talk about that because for TSMC and this whole thing with like them coming to Arizona and with these chips, and we of course know the first generation node, and then of course there is the second generation node, which I think this will still be kind of behind a little bit. So when we kind of talk about the cost savings, and we know kind of what's happening out there in the ethers as far as like tariffs and things are concerned. So what is Apple really thinking here? And I do think as far as like the nodes are concerned, and for those of you who are like, what is this guy talking about with the nodes? It's still going to be a very capable machine, but I think we're going to be at least like a generation behind on this to save a little bit of money when it comes to probably having to increase costs of being produced or some kind of manufacturing in the United States. And of course, if tariffs are involved, and we don't really need to talk about that so much. But just that being said, it's Apple, I think the wheels are kind of spinning on how they can streamline certain products that they have, and then even work with current pieces that they have so that the costs, at least that they have to incur isn't that substantial for them. I don't know. And like having to like push that back onto the consumer when people are really kind of like thinking about their dollars and cents. As far as the M4, hold on, let's just keep going because like some of the stuff isn't even really like a big thing. But oh yeah, as far as the connection, two Thunderbolt 4 ports. So I see that. And so, we've got that. We still have Wi-Fi 6, well, Wi-Fi 6E up to 2 times faster than Wi-Fi 6, it says. And then the dual displays. So here's the thing, like with these newer chipsets, like the M2 can't do it, but with the newer chipsets, being able to connect up to 2 displays, and for those of you who may consider that as something that you really want, then okay, here we go. Then this might actually be a way to go for you. And yeah, I mean, I can't really knock it. I do think that we should be able to push multiple displays on these machines. I think that they have what is under the hood. I think it's capable. So let's actually look at the pricing here. Okay, here we are, and looking at, so yeah, nothing's really changed. So we've got the 10-core CPU, 8-core GPU, and I'll talk about this in just a sec, like as we're kind of building things out, but 16 gigs of RAM, definitely. And especially like if you're doing some like virtual machines, and we'll talk about that in a second. As far as the storage is concerned, I would love to actually see a little bit more storage, because I will say at $999, like once you start like upgrading these things and you start kind of creeping up, well, it's just another $100. Well, it's just another like $200. Here's the thing. If for like this external SSD here, I did a video on that. You can certainly scale that up. And for like that $100, like for less than $100 getting the enclosure, and then maybe another $100 to add at least like 1 terabyte, if not more, depending on the SSD that you're getting, you can certainly upgrade that, which is awesome. And so here's the thing though, with being ultra portable, I don't like to necessarily take external drives. So I get a little concerned for those of you that might want to run like virtual machines or to like really store a lot on your machine. That's why I wish like 256 would be like kind of go away, and like maybe we kind of start with 512. I understand this whole push to the cloud and everything, and maybe for like most users 256 is plenty. But here's the thing, for those of you that are thinking about a virtual machine and you want a little bit of extra memory for that virtual machine, I will say that what I would recommend is running your virtual machine on like an external drive and just have it on there if you're not going to upgrade your internal storage, and maybe adding a little extra memory. But like I said, for the education pricing, we're going to drop that down. I'll actually look at the education pricing as well. I don't think for those of you, like if you're not running a virtual machine, you're not doing anything too intensive, I think the majority, like I think 16 is fine. Like I get worried when we start like throwing, well, just 100, just to 200. And I know I was just saying that, but then you start just creeping into like a whole different sphere of like, well, MacBook Pro. So I really just like the way that it is at the base level when it comes to price, like I almost would just keep it there really for the majority of you. But before we go, well, here's the thing. Let's go to education pricing. And so starting at $899. So that's the thing. So we'll start with this. And I think I heard somebody say something to the effect of maybe adding like bumping up the cores like to the 10-core GPU. I mean, I don't seriously, like if this is your job, you're probably doing the MacBook Pro anyway, honestly. But here we are at $899. So let's hypothetically say like, okay, I'm a student and I am going to be running virtual machines. I do like the Mac OS experience, but I know that I got to run Windows or I got to run like Linux or something, for coding or testing or whatever it is. And so you're still looking at $200 as far as bumping up that memory, but you're at $1099. So like $100 more than that $999. Again, if you're a student, that might be worthwhile for that virtual machine environment. And again, keeping it maybe on an external drive. That way you don't necessarily need to worry about adding in. Because again, like if we go with storage, even for that, it's still going to be $200. So then you're like $12.99. You're like, okay, that still seems reasonable, but is it? I just I just hate for people to spend money or invest in something that I want you to understand. Like I believe in you, and you might say like I need this thing to last like 7 or 8 years, and you don't know where you're going to be in 7 or 8 years. You could be in a completely different category, a different station in life. Like you could be able to afford 3 or 4 of these, like no problem. So it's like, what is going to help you get your start? So like if you are a student and you're just kind of starting out and getting out there, then again, like I understand like files, folders, things kind of build up on that 256 and you might have to offload things. But like I said, when you get back to wherever it is, like your house, your dorm, apartment, whatever, maybe you need to offload stuff on an external drive. Maybe that's like a sacrifice that you need to make for, because that extra $200 could get you an external drive or something else, some other piece of equipment, software, or whatever it is that you are trying to do in life. So refurbished. Okay. So refurbished here, we have, what do we have? We've got the M2. So we have this one, 8-core CPU, 8-core GPU, 709. And it should still be the 16 gigs of RAM. Yes, it is definitely, it's the 16 gigs of RAM, 256. I mean, for 709, if you need to like push like multiple displays, but you still got the MagSafe, you still have Thunderbolt and like this whole like Thunderbolt 3/4 versus like Thunderbolt 4. I mean, honestly, in real world situations, I'm not sure like what difference you're really going to notice, because I just, you can push these machines, but like how hard are you really going to be pushing these machines? I talked about the video editing. Like I said, it's the thermal footprint here, or at least the throttling that occurs like on these like short bursts of like demand. Like I said, you can go back to some of my videos and watch, like I've kind of worked through some of these things. For most of us, we're going to be able to run like maybe multiple camera angles, 4K for sure, and H.264, H.265 video editing, using Final Cut, using DaVinci. And here's the thing, like if you get into something kind of complicated, you could use like proxy media. You really could. You could use like proxy media, and just that way, smaller files, it's not like the full file size, and the computer is able to kind of handle that as you scrub through that timeline and kind of work through the footage until you get everything cut up. And then you go in, and then maybe you're not working with proxy media, but you're doing the color grading pieces. But at that point, things are good. You're not really asking too much of the machine. So there are ways to kind of work around these things with very little friction, I will say. But going back here, so we're still on the student pricing? Yeah, no, yes, no, hold on. Here we go. So like student pricing. Okay. So $899 still, like if you 16 gigs for many of you, no virtual machines, you don't really need to allocate like memory to something else. Probably good for you, really, truly. But I would say if you're going to make an upgrade, for those of you that might need to have a little sandbox that you're playing in, testing in, or whatever, maybe that 24 gigs. Because I know that when I run virtual machines, I try to allocate as much memory as I can to get that experience, especially like in Windows. Although Windows, for me, it's been fine, but just so that you know, yeah, it's gonna bump you up to $10.99, and maybe that would be the better investment for you if you really need that. And then of course, when you do that, it looks like, oh yeah, that's awesome. So it looks like the 10-core CPU and the 10-core GPU is included in that memory bump. So yeah, if I go back, oh yeah, okay. So you get a couple extra cores for the GPU. I didn't even notice that, but here we are. Anyway, that's my rambling. These are my thoughts, trying to help save you some money, trying to tell you that these machines are very capable for doing quite a bit. So as you're thinking about it, as you're thinking about making these investments, especially for many of you, it's a big jump. It really is. But I do think that the base model is enough. And again, like I'm not justifying the fact that Apple keeps doing, like 16 gigs is like a gift. No, it should be standard. 256 as far as the storage, I mean, I'd like to see more, but I remember when we were arguing the fact of the 128 gigs that they did for years. That was abysmal. So these are my thoughts, my folks. I hope that you're all doing well. I hope you can make a buying decision. I'll be curious to see like what these machines look like, maybe testing them out here on the channel, seeing what I think, and if it's even like a worthwhile upgrade, at least for those of you that already have this machine, or at least dipping your toe or stepping into the Mac OS ecosystem. I mean, it's a pretty cool start. These things are awesome. You go out there and rock those faces, and I'll catch you right back here on the next one.